everybody, welcome to the Grundleverse. My name is Grundle. I am joined today again with good buddy Brian and the Mark DeRoche Experience, and today we are talking about Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. Welcome to the show, everybody. Like I said, we're talking about Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. If you don't know which one that is, it's the Claire Danes, Leonardo DiCaprio one set in modern times. We are not going to go into the story. There's not really any reason to give a rundown. I think everybody knows what Romeo and Juliet is. If you don't, this probably isn't going to help you in any way. Anyway, just go see the movie.
Spoiler alerts for a 500-year-old story.
Yeah. So we just got done watching it. None of us had seen this in a
I hadn't seen it in years.
Ryan?
Yeah, 20 years, or when did this come out?
97, I think.
Yeah, probably.
I know I saw it a few years after high school. I rewatched it one time and still liked it then. I hadn't seen it in a very long time, though.
But this is something we all saw when it came out, right?
Yes.
So we all have some kind of history with this movie. Most of us with Claire Danes, probably. But with this movie, yeah. I mean, come on. We were all about 14 when this came out. Claire Danes meant a lot to all of us back then.
I didn't see it in theaters or anything. I actually saw it in class.
Yeah, me too, actually.
One of my high school classes showed it.
Mm-hmm.
After we did a whole 2 weeks on Romeo and Juliet. That was our reward for getting through it.
Yeah, it was kind of a boon to a lot of English teachers around then. It was finally a Shakespeare movie that the kids would watch. And that's probably one of the best and first points to go to is I feel this was probably one of the most relatable Shakespeare experiences I had as a kid.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not easy for high schoolers to understand the Shakespeare language, and I feel like they really translated it well onto the screen.
Yeah, I think the context that they chose to go with in this made it a lot easier to understand a lot of the lines. Because all Shakespeare is pretty dense, but when you see it paired with a lot of the visuals that they chose, I think it was great.
Yeah, as somebody who hadn't seen or hadn't heard any of this or hadn't read Shakespeare in 15, 20 years, a lot of it I just didn't remember. But the way they do it, the way they portray everything and with the set pieces and the acting, everything made it easy to understand what was going on, even if you didn't totally understand exactly what they were saying. And
the modern update didn't feel forced to me.
No.
And it could be. They've certainly done plenty of other modern-ish Shakespeare things, but a lot of the other ones you see, they have to full-on translate it.
The things that were forced were so over the top that they were awesome.
Yeah.
Printing sword on the guns and dagger and things like that. And when he reaches for his long sword.
I like that they decided to they varied it up as it wasn't just everything wasn't sword 9mm.
Yeah.
It's specifically long sword where it should be a long sword, dagger where it should be a dagger. I think Mercutio's got a dagger on the beach, and
and that was a smaller pistol.
Yeah, Juliet definitely has a dagger at the end that Romeo brings to her. Before we go too deep into any of the other stuff, though, let's touch on the cast. I think the cast is probably one of the most important things in this movie. I really tip my hat to the casting director. I don't know who in this I would say wasn't perfectly cast. All the side people were certainly excellent.
Yeah.
But just looking at the main people, how did you feel about DiCaprio? Let's start with DiCaprio because I think he's maybe the biggest point of contention as far as casting.
I had an evolving opinion on DiCaprio because I think he was cast because he looks like he does or he looked like he did.
Yeah.
But I think in the less complex lines and in the more emotional parts, he did really, really well with those. I think that Shakespeare in general is kind of a crucible that shows real acting skill. The other members of the cast that have really mastered acting and had at that point, the contrast is just so apparent. Even Mercutio or John Leguizamo's great in it. And it's just that, I was pleasantly surprised by.
He's so good.
But Claire Danes is good too. It's just, I think it makes it really apparent what the skill level is of a particular actor when they're trying to do Shakespeare, especially trying to modernize it in this sort of context.
I think I just had really low expectations for John Leguizamo.
Yeah.
But at
But
the
he
same
was
time,
great.
he's just so good in this.
Yeah.
But I want to say, Brian, I had an epiphany watching this. I did watch it a few days ago that I didn't want to share with you because I did share it with Mark, and I felt like it really colors the way you see it. I feel like DiCaprio is the only one in the cast, give or take one or two people, who doesn't fully grasp what the lines mean.
Yeah.
Like, when it gets to be, when the scenes are intense, like towards the end when he's screaming towards the heavens or he's crying, he can pull it.
He knows why he's doing those things.
Yeah.
At that point. Like, he knows Juliet's dead. Or, well, he thinks Juliet's dead. So, he's very emotional.
Yeah.
Like, he gets in that fight and then he kills... Tybalt. Right. He kills him. Gets very emotional there. Like, he knows why he's getting emotional at those points.
That's probably one of the best scenes, too, of him, either thou or I must, or both must go with him.
Right.
It's
but
one of his
everything
better
before that,
lines.
when things are a lot calmer, it feels like you're absolutely right. Like, he's reciting lines that somebody told him how to say them and what they are, but he doesn't know what they mean.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's speaking another language. Like, he's doing a film in another language where they take a foreign actor and they teach them the pronunciation and how to say those words, but they don't really grasp what they're saying.
And I think you see it especially very early in the movie, like when you first see him and he's with Benvolio, and Benvolio, who was it, Dash? The actor's name? Dash,
yes.
Dash Mihawk, which is one of the more challenging roles just for the modernization, because most of Benvolio's lines are banter.
Yeah.
Like, he's doing old school Shakespearean, speak while trying to banter in like a teenage way.
Yeah.
But he pulls it off. Like,
and it's funny because he just looks like a big meathead, but he does it really well.
But it only makes DiCaprio's readings even weirder, like, because Benvolio is bantering with him, and Romeo is just reciting lines back to him.
And Dash seems to get it.
Yeah, it's mostly that, like, DiCaprio doesn't seem to know where the jokes are, which is really important in Shakespeare because he puts a lot of little gags in there that are all about the delivery. If you just blather out the line, you're gonna miss all the beats.
Yeah,
and he kind of feels like he does a lot early.
I'm gonna blame Baz maybe for that, or Baz, Mr. Lorman, because this is his second movie that he wrote and directed. The first one was one that was, I think, just released in Australia or something. But he's working with actors who have done Shakespeare a bunch of times. Like, it's clear that these people have done this, so they don't need that much in the way of direction as far as, like, finding out what their character feels or thinks. So I think in the case of DiCaprio, I don't think really did know what a lot of those lines meant, and he would have benefited from a director who maybe was better in working with actors, because I think the vision is there and, like, aesthetically he nailed it, and the other actors, the lack of direction isn't as apparent because they're more seasoned and they could do this in their sleep. So I think that's one facet of the movie where maybe his inexperience shows a bit, because I think otherwise it's a great film and a great adaptation, but I could see his inexperience.
DiCaprio would have done a lot better with this if he got to see this with us in high school.
Yeah, that's true.
To be fair, they're
like,
really...
if he wasn't an actor and had a high school class where he spent a couple weeks learning Shakespeare and then saw this movie, he would have done a lot better.
A lot of those lines, like, to be fair to Leo, like, they're very difficult to deliver in a convincing way.
Yeah, Romeo's a lame character.
He had a lot of the more difficult lines. He had a lot of the more difficult scenes, and some of the and there were some that he just nailed. He did a good job most of the time.
Yeah, I don't know about most of the time.
Well, all right,
but like
at most of the important times.
I would say when he is really good, he's really good.
Yeah.
So you can kind of overlook some of the weaker scenes, and I will give him that, like, in that first scene with Benvolio, he's literally reciting poetry. Yeah. Like, that's the lines. Like, DiCaprio or not, the lines are him reciting poetry. Romeo's a lame character throughout. Like, without digging into
Yeah.
what's wrong with the characters in this play, like, he's not. It's not the best character.
Shakespeare.
Like, well, because what's kind of important, just in the sense, just as far as like the Romeo and Juliet strength of the characters, they are insane teenagers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. So you have to be able to bring that to it, and I guess
It just felt like Claire brought
oh,
that.
she is amazing. Like
She
Claire
brought that,
Danes,
and he kind of just didn't get what it was.
yeah. But then again, the Romeo character is much more shallow.
Yeah.
Like Juliet, yeah, she falls head over heels at a moment's notice, just like he does. But she does have a little bit more going on in that she's a lot more cloistered.
Mhm.
She's younger. Her father is. You don't see him as controlling until the moment when you do.
Yeah.
But once you see that moment, you're like, oh, okay, this is how she's been living.
Yeah.
And when you first encounter her, she's not. I mean, she's going along with the
He's not
family.
being all controlling. She's got the nurse that's always looking after her. and,
Yeah.
Like, she's got people around her kind of guiding her through what she's doing. And then, the Montagues are just kind of hanging out and being the Montague boys.
Yeah. I mean, even the fathers, the one time you don't see Paul Sorvino very much. Like the Montague father is fairly rarely in the play, but when you do see him at the beginning, he's ready to jump into the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's give me my long sword
Ryan
home.
Denny?
Yeah, he just can't.
He's ready to rock.
Oh, am I calling him Paul Sorvino? Sorry,
Yeah, Paul
Sorvino is
He's
Capulet.
the Capulet.
Dennehy is Montague. That's what it is. Yeah, no, I don't want to mix
Paul
those
Sorvino
up because
from Goodfellas fame.
yes, I don't want to mix them up just because Sorvino is so far above Dennehy in this. Like the character has a lot more to
Sorvino is
do.
one hell of an actor.
Oh, he's amazing in this.
That guy is a monster actor.
Him and what was I say? Him and Postlethwaite get like two of the major
Yeah, the
monologues
priest.
in it. Yeah, him and the
They're
priest.
both great.
They are clearly the most trained Shakespearean actors they've
Yeah.
got. So they cast them well,
Yeah. No, and that was the kind of like what led us to this point was starting with the casting thing. Like the cast is amazing.
Yeah. And well, we haven't really gone too deep into it, but Claire Danes, oh my god. Like I know we said that once or twice,
Even
but
being as young as she was at the time, she nailed it.
it's just her transfer. You can see the transformation of her character as she goes.
Yep.
I mean, you see that a little bit in Romeo, but man, when you first encounter her, she's very different when she's interacting with the nurse and the mother. When she gets with Romeo, yeah, her monologue, leading up to her encounter with Romeo is very, very well delivered and kind of gives you a good insight into her. And then her scene when she goes to the priest with the gun
Mhm.
after Romeo has been exiled, that is a chilling scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it is.
What is it? Speak not long, cry long to die, or something like that. Oh, so good with her dagger, her 9mm dagger.
And Michael from Lost, holy shit!
Yeah,
I did not like that guy in Lost. He just gave such an amazing performance in this movie.
yeah. He's not in a ton of stuff outside of Lost, but like maybe
But he just nails this one part, and I had forgotten that was him because it had been so long since I'd seen this.
And it's an important part to get right because I mean Mercutio is probably one of the most.
One of the most important characters.
Yeah, outside of Romeo and Juliet, he's the only non-family member to either family that you see outside of like the prince and the nurse.
And you have to care about him for
Yes.
the emotional impact to be there. So it's important that it be played by an actor like this.
I'm like sitting here scrolling through his IMDb, and it's a ton of TV stuff and nothing I've seen
Yeah,
him in.
and it does seem like he gets multiple episode arcs on TV shows.
He was Link in Matrix Revolutions. So.
Oh, he was in Oz. I didn't see Oz.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well that explains that. Maybe everybody knows who he is and I don't, but I certainly know him from this. He was amazing in this.
He was.
Anybody else?
The apothecary from Blade Runner.
Yeah, there's so many
He's that
small
old Blade
parts.
Runner.
That guy was really good. I mean, the nurse, Miriam Margolyes, I know.
The apothecary had like 2 lines in the whole thing. He's got 2 separate scenes and doesn't even have a line in the first scene. He just kind of like nods towards something and it's still pretty solid.
We should note that Jamie Kennedy is in this movie.
I was hoping we could avoid noting
I don't know
that.
if we need to
I
say
was-
more. But
I was 100% prepared to skip over that.
Yeah, Jamie Kennedy is in this. I mean, he does a good job
Yeah,
as what he is,
He's
But
he's also very well cast.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess he's supposed to be annoying, and he nails it.
Yeah.
he does. It's probably like the best performance Jamie Kennedy has ever mustered. But the nurse. This is where I knew her from. She's the botany teacher in Harry Potter.
Oh.
She features fairly largely here, enough so that she's throughout the series. So yeah, I would never have picked her out. But man, she was really.
She
good
got a lot of screen time. She was good.
Yeah, and she has a lot of like, not difficult lines, but it's more like if her scenes are done well, they come across very well.
Yeah.
You know, the character can come across kind of stuffy, but she's got very
when she's
good
withholding
gags.
what Romeo said to her from Juliet. That was very interesting.
Where is your mother?
I thought that Paul Rudd being cast as Paris was important because any rational person would choose Paul Rudd over Leo, but a teenager like Claire Danes would not do that. So it's important that
especially in the 90s.
Yeah,
90s
like you're gonna go with Leo.
would not have picked Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
So I think that serves to illustrate how much of an obnoxious teenager she is.
Actually, the Paul Rudd as Paris thing, I thought that was his
fine.
performance. Well, it's not just that his performance was interesting. The direction with the Paris character was fairly interesting because he's not like threatening in any way throughout the whole movie. And then all of a sudden they put that one scene in the church where you're like, oh, maybe he is a little more controlling than I thought. And it's immediately following her father screaming that you belong to me and I will give you to my friends.
And you'll be mine. I give you to my friend. And you'll be not hang, beg, starve, die in the streets.
Yeah.
It puts Paris in a much different
Stuff got
light.
really real very fast.
And I don't. Well, we were just talking about this before, that it's the scene that's cut out at the end is in the play. Romeo kills Paris.
Right.
Just before he goes into Juliet's tomb, he encounters Paris and fights and kills him. So it's kind of, I don't know about odd that that scene was cut out, but it feels like.
But it was a 2-hour movie.
Oh yeah. Runtime issues.
Yeah, not even just that, but like for someone who hadn't read Shakespeare in a long time, if you know the story, like the beats that it hits all the important ones that people remember.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like, it might have skipped over this scene. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that scene was important, but
I'm not even
it didn't feel like I missed anything.
I'm not faulting it that it left it out. I don't have any real problem with anything that got left out. What strikes me as weird is it feels like with the church scene and the kind of turn towards Paris seeming a little dark, it would make sense to also include that scene.
That's true.
Like, because if that church scene didn't exist, then the scene where Romeo kills Paris feels very awkward because you have no real reason to be rooting for Paris to get killed up to that point. So if
it feels like it should have been all or nothing.
Yeah,
like, either neither of the scenes or both of the scenes, but they only picked one of them and shoved it in.
Because all I can picture with like Romeo killing Paris in that scene is the scene in the Monty Python's Holy Grail where Lancelot goes nuts and starts slaughtering the wedding. I just picture Romeo running up to the steps of the church, like just killing everybody that gets in his path. And Paris is dead. Oh no, the groom!
That is how a lot of Shakespeare goes.
That's true.
I'm thinking maybe like Baz Luhrmann just didn't have the heart to kill Paul Rudd, so he just couldn't bring himself to make that choice.
Could you kill Paul
Yeah,
Rudd?
who can fault him?
That scene leading up to the crypt and whatnot was great with all the police helicopters all around, and that's where the stakes really were upped, and it just felt so tense, and that climax was awesome.
Yeah, it gets real.
It is a
Very
very
fast.
long, like, last half hour to that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And
It doesn't feel long though.
No, I don't mean like in that sense. I just mean like there's a lot going on in that last half hour.
Yeah.
Like you are in it as pretty much go the entire way. As soon as he pulls away from Mantua, like
Yeah.
the pedal is to the metal for the next 20 minutes. With these like, with the drop in mood once he gets into the tomb.
Mm-hmm.
It's like once those doors closed, that's it. A complete shift in tone at that point. You go into the full neon church.
They spend a lot of time on each little thing because there's just not a lot to the story. but it never it never feels slow. It never feels long.
Yeah.
It never it's never boring. It's weird how it just held my attention all the way through.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand. I think anybody who would find the movie dragging or would not enjoy it would largely be because they're just not into the romance stuff.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't buy into the Romeo and Juliet, love at first sight, oh my god, worlds colliding kind of, feelings, then what? It's Romeo and Juliet. If you're not buying into that, then you're not going to like this. I mean, I almost want to disagree with that statement just because I think this movie can change your mind. If you don't like the Romeo and Juliet story, I think this movie is still a really good representation of it.
It is. It's the best.
Well, I say that because I had read Romeo and Juliet prior to this, and I was not a fan of it. You come away from it saying, well, these two are idiots. But it was portrayed well enough. Maybe a lot of that comes down to how well they do the first meeting scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is a very well done scene.
It sure is.
Like, the music is, I would say, well chosen, but I think that song was done for the movie. Just the setting, with the exception of the weird guy in a prince costume at the urinal. Because for anyone who forgets that scene, that's the bathroom scene where DiCaprio and Claire Danes first see each other through the aquarium. But the aquarium is dividing the men's room from the ladies' room, and first DiCaprio has to walk past a guy at the urinal. Just then that shot hovers on him too. Like, it's not like it quickly pans past. When he gets to the aquarium, you can still see the guy in the back.
Know where they are.
Oh yeah.
Maybe Prince required that to be in the movie. Like, there has to be a guy dressed as a prince at a urinal for you to use my song.
Oh, that's possible.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But that was I did like the music in that scene especially.
Yeah.
I mean, the music throughout is excellent.
That's great.
But specifically in that scene.
But watching stars without you, my soul cries.
I mean, again, if you're not into the romance thing, okay. But if you are, if you're willing to get hooked by it, the soundtrack in that scene and the visuals with the Claire Danes in the angel costume.
If you're like a human with emotions, then I think you'll really like that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, her Claire Danes, just like 90s Claire Danes is...
Yeah. I mean, but ultimately, yeah, that story can feel a little stupid just because it is love at first sight. I'm willing, and I think that's kind of the one place where the modernization doesn't quite work, and that's that back in the times that this was initially set, we wooed, we exchanged vows, we're going to get married. That was a lot more believable than than, oh, I met you, it's 1997. Oh, you look nice. We're going to get married tomorrow, right? Yes, absolutely, we're going to get married now. Like, not even a question. Of course we're going to get married. We just kissed, didn't we? It doesn't quite modernize as well as most of the rest.
But also, we're looking at this through the lens of being 30-something years old, whereas in high school, I bought that.
Yeah, and
that made sense.
It's clear.
Oh, you met somebody, you are head over heels in love with them all of a sudden. Of course, you're just going to get married. Like, that made sense.
See, but I think the marriage step is the one step too far for the modernization. Like, like
especially
two teenagers
in our age.
I mean, not even our age. Even back then, I felt that was a little weird. I'm like, okay, yeah, but they did still just meet, and they're going to get married tomorrow. They haven't even had a conversation yet.
Oh, no, I didn't even think about it. I was just like, yeah, of course, that makes sense.
Well, I think third base is marriage now.
Yeah.
We've progressed that far.
I mean, I guess I guess if I'm going to complain about that, then you would also have to complain about Father Capulet giving his daughter to Paris. I mean, sure, it's just he's insisting that she marry him, but at the same time, I guess that doesn't quite update that well. Like, well, I don't know. I mean, it's something to be a little about, but I guess that's still like a question of having a problem with the story itself.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's important to look at the parts that.
For many other stories, I would buy into that, but it's just updating an old story. So yeah. I don't put a lot of stock into that.
Yeah, I think the only reason that it sticks out to me is because everything else modernizes so well.
Yeah.
Like, nothing else really felt weird at all.
That makes sense.
So it's when I ran into that, I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't. I'm like, that's the one part where I had to accept that it was a Shakespeare play that I was watching.
Yeah.
Like everything else, I could, if it wasn't for the language, you could say you're just watching a modern anything.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you're right.
But that one does kind of it reminds you that you're watching a Shakespeare play if the language didn't do enough for you.
They did some really clever like blocking and staging to make the meaning of the lines more apparent, and that I think is really helpful for people who are, especially younger people who are trying to understand the story and some of the more complex lines, because they come at you really quickly, like all the lines to actually understand the meaning as they're being said is difficult, but then to have these really clever juxtapositions and staging choices, I think was
well, like Mercutio's monologue on the beach with Benvolio, like that's a lot of words he throws at you all at once, but even if you don't fully understand it, the gunplay and all that stuff they're doing, and they're blocking in their movements are at least kind of getting you the idea of what's going on. Like, what is he trying to get across? And there's a lot of that throughout the movie, where it doesn't really matter if you know what every single word they're saying. Just the delivery and the timing it gets across what they're saying. Like, I know Claire Danes, especially in a few parts, when she's talking, when her mother comes in, when she's about to kill herself, and her mother comes in, that little back and forth there, it's just like her tone of voice and the pacing of what she's saying. It sounds like even if she wasn't using Shakespeare language, you know exactly what she would be saying to her mother in those parts.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of that throughout. I say the only people that do like straight on monologuing, the priest, I would say his speech in the middle, that feels like the only part of the movie where someone got a straight up Shakespearean monologue and there was nothing else to it. Like when he's talking to the two little altar boys and he's working on the herbs. It really doesn't have any bearing on anything. Yeah. They just kind of left it in because he's so good at it. I mean, it's important.
Well, that's where he's like making the poison the first time, right? So he's like talking about making the poison.
Yeah, that part of the action is that there is some callback, and it is important. But a lot of that, it's just him giving a nice monologue.
Sure.
But and there's not a lot of that in the movie, or maybe they cut out from the play, because it's trying to follow along with the text here and there throughout it, and there is chunks missing, which is all right. If you tried to go word for word, you just overwhelm the whole movie,
right? And
you'd lose a lot of time that they spent on like wide shots that were impressive and important.
Yeah, and they hit the important beats, and just it was good.
And they didn't add to the text.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That too.
I would say maybe there was like one or two lines that were added, and it was almost always Mercutio singing along to something.
Run free, never be hung up like Rosaline and me.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's a couple times he swears that aren't in there. I felt like Mercutio's the only one who was allowed to break script. He's just good at it, and it came across well, but he did break script.
And it fit in. Like, one time he swore, and I'm like, wait, that can't have been in the original. But I was, like, willing to just accept it, because he's so good at it.
This is when he was yelling at Romeo, and Romeo's climbing up the thing. Yeah, that I do love his delivery on that line. Like, it...
Right before he gets back in the car and they leave from the party. Yeah.
It sounds like what you'd be yelling to a friend. The words aren't right, but everything else sounds like somebody yelling to an idiot friend who just ran off drunk.
Then he just swears and gets back in the car and they leave.
Yeah.
The car.
The carriage.
Yeah, the carriage. Oh, God. But the cars and the way they dressed, everything, it was just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about the visuals, because this movie is definitely largely about the visuals.
Yeah.
I know you specifically loved the neon church part.
I sure did.
The Verona Beach church.
Yeah. Fair Verona's church is covered in neon crosses.
Yep. Fair indeed.
And it's amazing. They did that weird 90s thing where they speed everything up by 0.5%.
Yeah.
So everything looks like really hyper at certain points.
Like,
Like not
all the scene
not the whole,
transitions,
but it was
like-
only like it was certain scenes and things. A lot really early on, especially during where they're introducing the Capulet boys and the
Yep.
Montague boys, and there were a few other times they do that. But that was it's a little weird, but it was kind of cool.
Yeah,
Different.
They did it, well, especially at the party, although a lot of that was probably
Party was
because
a
they
lot
were
of
all
that.
on ecstasy.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of, like, during scene transitions and stuff, especially when they're
That
going
too.
to the Verona Beach, any of the Verona Beach sites, they would kind of speed that up a little bit. Just kind of gives
But they
you...
did it during those like when they were trying to introduce all the characters too.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
A lot during that.
Yeah. I do love that opening. I
Yeah,
love
me
the,
too.
Yeah, it's so different, but I do love it. Like
it's very
they introduce them
Shakespearean.
as the characters
Yeah.
and not like they don't have the actors' names or anything. They
Yep.
just introduce all the characters with this little thing that you would normally see where they're introducing the actors. But,
Yeah.
but they only do it with the character names.
I like bookending it with the TV anchors.
Yep.
I like that choice a lot.
It was really good.
Not quite
Yeah.
sure why.
Even though they like repeated the opening lines like 3 times.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down. I thought that was a little weird. I love it, but it is a little awkward that it's like they had 2 good openings but couldn't decide which one they
So
wanted.
they just did both.
Yeah.
Like they had Postal Wait read out the opening and they're like, "That's amazing," and then Baz Luhrmann's like, "I kind of want to do this TV thing," and they're like, "But that's amazing. Let's do both." And then they close out with the TV too. Although that one they just straight up take the Prince's lines. That is supposed to be the Prince's lines at the
Right.
very end.
I kind of like that they did that.
Oh, I
But
liked
the way,
it too.
Yeah,
It
the
made
way,
more
it worked
sense.
really well, especially with opening that way.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
really loved it. I thought it was an interesting. It gives you that nice fade to black moment at the end when you should be feeling fade to black.
Yeah.
Although it is a little odd that there's that false ending.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, there's not much they can
that
do
like
about
freeze frame, and then they just continue.
it. Yeah.
They're like, hey, that was a great movie. Oh no, there's still 5 minutes to go. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's weird because it's, on the one hand, there's not a lot you can do about it because in Romeo and Juliet, they have to die and then there's still more to the play. So you can't end it with them dying.
But it's super important that you
yeah,
make
it's-
sure that everybody understands that this is like really an important part of the movie.
and you have to really play up that scene because how do you not? But,
yeah, but
but
I
the
don't
finals-
know if a freeze frame finish was the way to go.
Yeah, and the musical choice was like just with the fade out right there, making you like, oh, and we're done. Oh,
Nope.
it's like they put a post credit scene before the credits. Oh, all are punished. All are punished.
All are punished!
I love that line, although I do have a hard time with the fact that he basically just gives the same delivery twice in the movie. Like, Romeo is banished. All are punished. It's like all he's allowed to do in the movie.
Just add Ed to things.
Yeah, he has to yell. No, I was thinking that when I was rewatching, he does just say banished. He doesn't
Oh, okay.
he doesn't do the hard Ed, but it's still essentially the
He
same
should've. It
kind of
would've been
shouting.
better.
I thought I like it's just so on the nose, but good delivery. It just felt a little weird to me that.
I mean, not like I'm sitting here trying to improve Shakespeare, but it would have been great if he had delivered it that way.
Yeah, I have some notes for Shakespeare if we can get in contact with him.
I mean, to be fair, I guess it's written banished. You can say it however you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he just said it wrong. Maybe it was supposed to be banished.
Yeah, come on. I was gonna say come on. I missed it. I was gonna say come on, that guy's name, but I don't know his name. I don't know who
It's
played
Bondi Curtis Hall.
Vondi Curtis Hall.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Chicago Hope. That's who it is. I mean, he's good in it, but
Yeah.
he was definitely a '90s actor. Like he was. I really only
Broken Arrow. There we go.
Yep. Apparently he's directing now. All right,
Good for him.
that's enough, Vondi Curtis Hall. You didn't have a very big part. Oh,
No, and the parts that he had, he nailed. He was
Oh,
good. I liked him.
anybody else we're forgetting? I know we've moved past the cast and we've gone on to other things.
We talked about Jamie Kennedy, but we could bring him up again just to.
Actually, Jamie Kennedy's not a bad segue if we're going to talk about the. Well, no, we're talking visuals, and
Yeah.
for all that he's, I don't want to give him credit for anything. He looked the part.
He sure
like
did.
the I like the contrast between the Capulet boys
Yep.
and the Montague boys. Like it gave you right at the start a very, very certain appearance for both of them. The Montagues are...
They both had very,
yeah,
set appearances, and I loved their cars.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not even like a car guy, but good God.
You definitely get to feel that like these were two warring families.
Yes.
The context of like the cops like having a presence. And,
Even that like first scene where they just show the Capulet and Montague buildings across the street from each other.
That was one thing I loved about the movie, is that it gives you all this world building without, since they can't change the text, you know, you've got to explain who are the Capulets and Montagues without saying the words. And it's like, oh, there's a Montague Construction.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, I know what he is. And if you see two buildings with their names on the top, I think we can all infer what they are. Big businessmen.
But then they even have like little things for you to catch, like when DiCaprio runs into the Globe Theater.
Yes.
It's like all run down and beat up, and it has like, it doesn't matter that that's what he's running into, but like that you can kind of make out the words on the top of the door that say Globe Theater. It was kind of nice.
I mean, even the choice to like set it in Verona Beach because it's close enough.
Fair Verona.
no reason to set this in Italy. We've got a Verona Beach right here. I do love the setting though. Like the big Jesus on top of the church, which you see over and over and over, is excellent. It allows for a lot of insane sweeping helicopter shots.
Yeah.
Clearly, Baz Luhrmann had a helicopter and was going to use it as much as possible in this movie.
And also, I want to move into that church.
You could be Neon Mark. What else? We haven't talked about the audio, which is the sound. I don't just mean like, I know we talked the soundtrack, but the sound mixing. It's not something I normally notice in a movie, but it was
very apparent in this one.
Yeah, like used very, not heavy-handedly, very obviously. Like somebody took the care to make these noises, make the noises they did.
Right. They use sound to kind of like amplify a lot of the shots.
Yeah.
Like when they show John Leguizamo's, steel boots.
Yeah, Prince of Cat's boots.
Prince of Cat's boots. They've got a very specific sound effect for them.
The crunch on the match.
When he steps on the match and then crunches it into the ground. They make they have a very set sound for it, and they crank that just for that little brief second that they show it. But they do that throughout the movie. Like they use sounds to amplify everything that they show.
Yeah, when we were talking about the scene with Romeo, what soft would light through on yonder windows breaks that whole scene.
Right.
And break into the pool area, knocking everything down. They really jack up the noise on all that.
On all the stuff that falls over.
Although in that one scene, I don't know how it slipped by, but there's a moment where Romeo jumps out of the water like mid-line, and two different mics clearly pick him up. So half of the line is coming through one mic, and half of the line is either dubbed later or not. I don't know, but it's very noticeable, and it was just a small thing. I've remembered it and noticed it as a kid. I've noticed it every time I've watched it. I just can't unhear it. But the best...
It might have even just been a mistake, but even if it was, like...
It was just kind of weird that it snuck through.
It felt because like everything else was so deliberate.
It was such an obvious mistake. Like, you couldn't not notice it, so I don't know how it got past. But, that's a small thing. It's, the best one, I thought, though, was the final scene with Romeo and Juliet in the tomb. Mm-hmm. Like, every sound. There's nothing they do that you don't hear the click. When you... What was the when she picks up the gun? Mm-hmm. There's so many. Yeah, the dagger.
Oh, dagger. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that one's a dagger.
But every little click, her little finger on the trigger, the snap of the safety.
Yep.
Just echoes through the church, and all leading up to that final gunshot. It is just, the sound editing in that scene alone is just amazing, and
it's just crazy how well it adds to the visuals. Like they mesh so well together.
Because it's a very quiet scene. Mm-hmm. It's probably one of the only scenes in the movie that doesn't have some kind of soundtrack backing it.
Yeah.
There is, when he walks into the church, there is something playing. I thought it might be like an instrumental version of the love song, but I don't know. But then it does cut out, I think, and it gets very quiet. I think my favorite noise of all the stupid things to be excited about, my favorite noise in the church is that one sob that she gives out. Like, after she fully realizes he's dead, and she kind of like sits up and she gives one sob, and she cries quietly after that, but that's all she needed.
Mm. Just the way they made that sound, the echo in the church. You felt it, and you didn't need anything more. She didn't need to sit there sobbing. She just needed that one cry. Oh, really like that. Really liked that scene. Really liked everything they did with that. Yeah, it's such a different thing. Like, I just haven't seen many movies that really put so much effort into making the sound matter that much.
Yeah. But, that's pretty indicative of the whole movie. It really feels like they took a lot of care with a lot of it.
Everything felt deliberate.
Soundtrack,
except for that one sound that you're talking about. Effect. Outside of that, everything just felt extremely deliberate. It felt like one man's vision, and he got to do whatever he wanted, and just made it what he wanted, and it was perfect.
I mean, I feel like a lot of the criticisms I would have of the movie are just criticisms of the story itself. Yes, I'm not a fan of Romeo. I can understand where Juliet is coming from, but Romeo still kind of feels like a dog for 90% of the movie. Or I guess 90% of the play. I mean, he certainly is a dog at the beginning. He's chasing after Rosaline and then immediately shifts over to Juliet, and even the priest makes note of that. But, that's not the movie's fault, really. There's nothing you can do about that. Couple actors I thought were iffy. I mean, as good as the cast was, I love Brian Dennehy, but he was not very good in this. I mean, he didn't have a lot of lines, which is good, but the couple lines he delivered. Hearing him say, Romeo's tears augment the fresh morning's dew, it felt like it was hurting him to say it. He's like, I don't want to say fresh morning's dew. You say it. You cashed the check, you say it.
Yeah.
But
it's probably good that he didn't have a lot of screen time.
I mean, it's the
he didn't
less...
seem very into it. Not like Mr. Sorvino.
Oh, God, yeah, Mr. Sorvino. I don't know, Brian, any big complaints you had about the movie? Any criticisms?
No.
Not at all.
I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, and it's great.
I can't believe how well it held up.
Yeah.
I did not expect to like it as much as I used to. Like, I knew when you first texted me and was like, hey, I want to watch this with you and we'll talk about it. I was like, yeah, I love that movie. Oh, wait, I haven't seen that in like 15 years. Yeah. It can't still be that good. But I loved it, like, back then. And it just really holds up. It was great.
Yeah, and it's weird that it holds up just, I mean, not so much with the distance from the 90s to now so much as, like, as you were saying, we're in our 30s now, and it still holds true where, yeah, as a teenager, I could certainly see being behind this whole thing. But
like being more behind the story, like behind the motivations, but
yeah.
But even without that, like it's classic Shakespeare. It's solid,
and it's well done movie, well directed,
the
well
movie
shot.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some of the visuals are a little dated, just for limitations of the technology and stuff. But I think it's well shot end to end. And I know we've mentioned the soundtrack a couple of times, but I want to make sure we specify how good this soundtrack is.
The soundtrack's great. The sets are amazing.
And the soundtrack is very well used.
Yep.
Like, the songs aren't just behind the scenes, they're enhancing all the scenes.
Yeah, they really are. They're a part of it.
And I know I said I was going to make special note of Quindon Tarver, the little boy who gets to sing When Doves Cry, and then according to his IMDb page, did nothing else. He was on Soul Train a couple times, probably promoting this movie. But he is amazing in this. I don't know what happened when his voice changed, but his rendition of When Doves Cry is surprisingly good.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just like my mother. She's never satisfied. Why do we scream at each other? This is what it sounds like when doves cry. Yes, they cry. Oh, they cry.
It really was.
And he did.
But it is funny watching him in the scene building up to that, where the choir is just...
It's the wedding scene.
And he just looks so bored. Until they let him just sing his song. He is so bored.
Maybe that's... Even though if it probably wasn't on purpose, I would accept if it was, because maybe he's just a kid who got pulled out of his baseball game to go sing for somebody's wedding. No, you gotta go sing. You're in the choir. You sing the best. I don't wanna. Just because she's getting married all of a sudden? That was a sudden wedding.
Yeah,
he wasn't expecting that.
No.
He thought he was going to be able to hang out today.
But he had a hell of a voice.
He did. Alright. I'm not sure what else I got. Most of my notes have been exhausted.
If for some reason you haven't seen this movie, go see this movie.
Oh, I did have one last thing I wanted to bash on DiCaprio for.
Oh, okay.
Just because I happened to be following along in the text at that moment, but his monologue just before they go to the party where he's like staring up at the sky and he hasn't taken the drugs yet, he is pausing at the end of every stanza. Like, it's like someone handed him the text and he said, "Okay, I stop here." It's like 7 lines and they're long.
That was
drawn
before
out
we decided
pauses.
he finally got good. So that was back when he didn't understand Shakespeare.
We were saying is like, did he just get hired for his looks? But he did do What's Eating Gilbert Grape before this, and he was very good at
I think it's exactly what you were saying, where it seems like even though he was a great actor, he just didn't understand Shakespeare.
Yeah.
So he didn't know what he was saying, and so he didn't know like he didn't know what beats to hit with like the timing and all that for the jokes, and then just got lost.
Last note on the soundtrack. Exit music for a film, which is the Radiohead song that plays during the credits, is not on the soundtrack because they requested that it not be, but they recorded that song specifically for this movie. Baz Luhrmann gave them the last 30 minutes and had them watch that, and then they started writing that song when they saw Juliet holding the dagger to her head. They just started writing that. So, and it's perfect for the movie.
That song is amazing.
It's just a great credit sequence. So it just wraps the whole thing up, and it's worth checking out.
And who here doesn't remember Lovefool?
Yep.
I mean, if you were around in the 90s, who does not remember Lovefool?
What a good song.
And it will always be the Romeo and Juliet song.
Yep.
So I don't think I can think of it in any other way. All right.
Nope.
All right. Any last notes? Anybody got anything? I think we've exhausted everything we had written down here.
If you haven't watched this in a while, watch it again.
Yeah, I think it is really worth revisiting.
Yeah.
I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, I wish I could say that it's on some kind of streaming platform, but as of May of 2018, it is not findable on anything for free that I'm aware of. Obviously, you can rent it on stuff, but hey, it's worth going out, finding a $5 copy at Target. It still exists. Find it, watch it. If you have kids and you're struggling to get them into any kind of Shakespeare, show them this. It's not even overly violent, I would say.
No.
Like, they're not graphic about anything.
No, none of it.
In fact, they do cut away a couple times when people are punching, so I'd say you could show this.
There's very little actual violence. There's a little bit of people beating on each other and a little bit of blood, but...
Yeah, like Mercutio getting killed is probably the most graphic thing in the movie, and that's nothing. So
yeah, they show the little wound from the glass for like half a second.
Yeah. So if you've got some like teenage kids who you're trying to get into this kind of stuff, totally pull this movie out and show them. There are
or if they're struggling with it in class.
Yeah.
You know, Good visual aid.
Any teacher who is trying to teach Romeo and Juliet and doesn't show this version is just insane.
Yeah. It really, really helped me back then.
Yeah. All right. I think that's all we got. I want to once again thank good buddy Brian and Mark Roche Experience for being here with me. Thank you all for listening. As always, if you liked what you heard, like, subscribe, follow, leave a comment. If there's any movies you would like us to cover, leave a comment, because sooner or later we'll run out the well. That's not true, but we'll take comment. We'll take suggestions.
I have so many things I want to make you watch.
Yeah, we do have some other things in the works, so stay tuned. And that's about all I got. Good night, everybody.